Hello and welcome to a Monday night special of the Scotland Rugby News podcast, because there's something on towards the week that is going to get in the way of one of our kind of regular slots. So here we are on a Monday night. My name is Bruce Aitchison and I get to be your host. A quick word from our sponsor before I speak to the man himself. The Scotland Rugby News podcast is brought to you by S1 Jobs. If it's time to hand in your transfer request, then head over to s1jobs.com and upload your CV today. There are thousands of jobs all across Scotland, and you can find the one for you at S1 Jobs. So go on, start searching tonight. It is all happening. It is all happening. 1872 week. Yes. Gavin Harper, you were there. You're going to be there. There's stuff to do in between. How are you?
I'm a bit better now than I was probably 24 hours ago, when I had basically done no Christmas shopping and had a mountain of post-1872 interviews to write up. But I've sort of managed to get through a fair bit today on the shopping front and the writing front, so we're not too bad. How are you?
I'm all right, thanks. I'm going shopping tomorrow, so we'll take care of that. I've not got any 1872 interviews to write up. I'll just read some of yours and watch some of your content and read some of the social media comments, which has been enlightening, shall we say.
Aren't they always?
Yeah, first I was there last year at Hampden. I wasn't there this year because Wee One was competing, so on my phone in the stands and trying to get my head round what was going on and how it was going on. Let's start with Hampden first. Atmosphere, attendance, down on last year, but Franco said better than last year.
Yeah, I mean, Franco said that as Glasgow Warriors head coach of a Glasgow Warriors event, wearing Glasgow Warriors tartan trousers. I'm not sure I agree. I thought it was flat again. I thought we talked, last week about the game, last year's game being a total, no contest. I thought this year was different, and there was more in it, but I still thought just the nature of the way the game played out, there wasn't a lot of great excitement. Probably one break from Sione in the second half was the kind of highlight moment, but all the tries were scored by forwards, and it just had that kind of. It was two packs going at it. It wasn't a great spectacle. I was disappointed again. And look, I think when you see pictures from the event, the photographers are kind of behind the two goals, which is of course where there's no fans. So from either end, the photographer shooting is going to have thousands of empty seats, which I don't think looks great. TV, of course, it looked a bit better, but yeah, I'm not sure I'm sold on it. I understand why Glasgow do it, but I think there's work to be done to make it a better experience and just kind of liven it up.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to hear from people watching and tuning in. Were you there? How did it go? George didn't love it. Although, George, I tell you what, you're working hard in that gym, taking pictures of yourself in the mirror. You go and give it a bit of flex, George. But nah, George, listen, I wasn't there. Last year, the weather wasn't great, and Hampden can be a difficult place to get to. I think it's going to continue because they need to, and 21,000 is better than what's Scotstoun, not quite 8.
It's not quite 8. I think the other thing, just to go back to, before we talk about Josh's point there, to go back to what George is saying, I get that the experience is not great. As you say, it's tough to get to. The timing, I think, is odd. I actually heard from somebody on Saturday that URC, of course, are involved in setting these fixtures, but as clubs, the clubs can individually request, whether they are at home for the first leg or away. And actually, Franco, I think, has requested that Glasgow play the first game at home. So there is that element of that is why that happens. But I just don't think it from a marketing point of view and from an event point of view that works, because it's the last, this week was the last Saturday before Christmas, the last big shopping day. I think people have got other things to do. Whereas next week, it'll be the 27th. Folk have probably had 2 or 3 days with their families. Folk are desperate to get out of the house. Folk want something to do, and Murrayfield's handy. If you're in Edinburgh, it's handy off the tram. If you're in Glasgow, it's the right side of Edinburgh, all that kind of stuff. I just think that Murrayfield is more set up for what rugby fans are looking for.
I harp on about this all the time, and you're sick of hearing it. I still think the 1872 should be first game of the season, last game of the season, decent weather, a chance to have other activities going on, and it means the last game of the season has something on it, or last game of the regular season has quite a lot on it added to it. And test match rugby can be pretty tough to watch because the analysis of the opposition is so detailed. The players are so familiar with each other. Edinburgh and Glasgow, that's magnified by, or multiplied, by 1,000%. They literally play each other. Some of them played together at club and school and age group, and then they play each other back to back, with what, 4 training sessions in between? Possibly exactly. 5 training sessions in between. So what do you change other than a couple of bits of personnel?
I mean, that's it. And I think that moves us on to Josh's point there. I think, do we overrate the danger Edinburgh pose? Probably not, because the players know each other. The form and all that kind of stuff is out the window for these games. And you kind of saw that. So? Because you kind of saw that at the weekend, because Glasgow came into it on such a high after beating Toulouse, and you think, okay,
and I know that, but it's hard to be on a high all the time. And
no, I get that.
They hit what I hope is the rock bottom by getting a donut against Scarlets.
Yes.
That's probably used up the really, really poor performance of the season.
Yeah.
So that, and we talk about this pretty much every week. Players who are always a 7 or an 8, and then you get 2 or 3 who give you a 9 or a 10.
Yeah.
Glasgow, I think your ratings, I think most players were 7 and 8s.
Yeah.
But 7 and 8 of a team that is performing at a good level, the expectation comes that's just what they do. And as you said, the tries were scored by forwards. There wasn't a lot of get off your seat, backline attack, line breaks. I don't know. It is tough, and sometimes that derby does take over a little bit because of the emotion. On Josh's point, this is, and I spoke about this during the World Cup and during the Autumn Nations. If you've got 11 in the world playing against 6 in the world, chances are 6 in the world is going to win. But 7 against 8, all of a sudden, right now we've got a competition, because the thing that's separating you two is probably our result. And 1 can beat 2 and 3 can beat 4. Can 4 beat 1? Tough one on the perfect day. So I get what you mean, Josh, and I don't know if I've explained myself particularly well there, but maybe we overrate the danger, but I think that's why we love it, because there is still that chance. And Edinburgh last year went to Hampden, didn't show up, and then the following week got a result.
But I think that's interesting, because, sorry to butt in, I think it's interesting because Edinburgh got a result by making a game a scrap and a total dogfight, and just like that war of attrition, and they got a lucky bounce. But that, for 65 minutes, that game was the worst game I've ever watched at Murrayfield. And I have seen some rubbish over the years. For, I think, 45
Gav, I wish you'd get off the fence and tell us what you think. I'm sick of this.
for 40 minutes anyway on Saturday, I had nothing. I had absolutely no idea what was going to be in my match report, because I thought this has just been like, how many nights, a Tuesday night at training where the ones train against the twos and you go 9, pick and go, one out carry, and eventually you make a few yards and you find yourself at the line. Like spectacle. It was just so difficult to get excited about. Second half was a wee bit better, but I think if Edinburgh, you're right, or Edinburgh, who are maybe 8th in the league, or were last year, are they going to beat Glasgow, who are in the top 4? Probably not. So they make it that fight. I think Edinburgh realise if we try and outplay Glasgow, we might not come out well. Lapman's in again. Pre-Six Nations factor does make it spicier. I agree with that.
Do you?
Yeah, I do. Well, I certainly. I mean, it used to. Remember back in the days of. I'm thinking of the Chris Fazaro and Scotty McLeod with the punch up at Firhill. There was a bit of that, but now I do think. In some areas, yes. Like we spoke to Gregor Hiddleston after the game, and he obviously, without telling us as much, he will have thought before the game, do you know what? I'm going to go out and try and prove a point here.
I don't. All right, okay, yeah. I suppose you and Lapman are maybe coming at it from a different way. Gregor Hiddleston is going, look at me, Gregor. I'm not sure. Well, Gregor maybe is looking at him. I mean, he's not looking past Ewan Ashman. Ewan Ashman's his number 2 unless something drastic happens. Pierre Schumann is his number 1 unless something drastic happens. There's a Xander. That's Gregor's front row for the game against Italy. Has to be.
I mean, it is.
And I can't imagine what's going to change that. But I get what you mean, and maybe I didn't take Lapman's point the way it was intended. You're right. For somebody like Gregor Hiddleston, maybe it is. For Stafford McDowell, maybe it is. George Horn, kinda.
I think almost
Adam Hastings, maybe.
Is Ben Velicott the guy who's actually saying, don't forget about me? I think there's a lot of that. That's a
tune. That is a tune. That is but I suppose, but Ben Velicott's also got the chance to throw caution to the wind. Like he's got nothing to lose because he's not in Gregor's plans. And I was really chuffed because I think I mentioned this. I don't know, maybe a couple of pods ago. Under Mike Blair, Ben Velicott tapped and went and looked for little chip kicks and took penalties quick and then hacked them on rather than allow kick for touch because it was a bit more loose, whereas he's not really had that freedom. And then he had, he was able to do that. And I don't know why. I don't know I don't know if Glasgow thought he's not going to do that because he's not been doing it. But I was pleased to see Benny have a crack.
And so was Gillian.
And Gillian, I don't disagree, but you got to give stars a chance to shine. And Benny, the forwards, Dylan Richardson put in quite a shift. I mean, he looked like, I don't know what makes it spicier for him. Is Dylan Richardson saying, "I'm in your squad, Gregor," but not as a hooker, because I'm not sure Dylan Richardson's really going to be considered in the back row. But
no, I agree.
He would be attractive to be on the bench as the hooker because he can cover the back row, which might mean you can go. I think Gregor is now a 6-2 kind of guy, but maybe if you have Dylan Richardson, you could go 5-3 and give yourself some more variety.
Everybody's favourite man from Moffat is in our comments, and his point leads us on to one I want to talk about. So, Cammy.
No, I'm not having it. I'm not. And unless he's sending sausage rolls, we're not putting his comments up.
I mean, surely sort it out, Cammy. No, look, don't be. I think so.
Although he is coming, he's bringing a bus. Moffat are bringing a bus to Murrayfield. So on that bus, I think there could at least be a bag of sausage rolls.
The Scotland Rugby News podcast sausage rolls.
Yeah. Listen, Cammy, I don't disagree. I think it's quite exciting to have you've got Duhan and Darcy on the Edinburgh wings, who are in a battle for caps and for tries and for Edinburgh and for Scotland, and you've got Kyle Steyn, who looked to be Gregor's first choice during the Autumn Nations, so there's something to play for there. And Cammy, I'll pick you up on your spelling because it's not Dobby, it's Dobie. It's only one B, but he's a class rugby player, and he's the kind of guy that can play on the ding-a-ling, or he can play at scrum half, and you could probably throw him at fullback and he would do a job there. But he looks like he just loves playing rugby, and I love that.
He does. So 2 points. I'll talk about Dobie first. We spoke to him after the game, and I was really, really interested because I asked him, does it worry you playing so much on the wing?
Yeah.
Means you then don't play, your chances diminish for Scotland at 9. And I sensed a bit of a different. Before, I've always thought Dobie was happy to be in the Scotland squad, and he would say the things like, I'll play wherever I want, or he said something like, I'm conscious of how often I'm playing on the wing, but I'll do what I need to for Glasgow, but I am wary of how often I play on the wing. And I thought, he fancies that as being Scotland's starting scrum half. The other point,
I like that. I like hearing that.
Yeah, and I do too. And I thought, do you know what? Fair enough. To go back to Cammy's point, Dobie and Steyn have been classed as wingers. Yes. Kyle Steyn in the second half against Toulouse was brilliant. Like, Dobie made a massive difference on going to the wing. They moved George Horn to 9. It all kind of worked a bit better. Here we are again, though, another week. Duhan and Darcy might as well have been sitting beside me. Like, Edinburgh cannot continue to have the 2 wingers that they've got and just give them virtually nothing to work with.
What was Magnus saying to you after the game? Because he sort of spoke a wee bit about the attack and to you after the game, didn't he?
Yeah, I mean, you could tell he was frustrated, and they think they know they need to fix it. He sort of said they need to fire a shot. They can't just hang on. And he's absolutely right. I think they've got huge injury problems, clearly. But you've got to come up with a way. These 2 guys should be absolutely central to your attack. It's like Man City planning to score goals and not factoring in the fact they've got Erling Haaland, who finishes just about every chance he's got. It doesn't make sense. Duhan, he got a knock at the weekend, but even before he came off, he just looked so frustrated. Darcy, to be fair to him, tries his best to get off his wing, and you could see it at times at the weekend. He was trying to do everything every time he got the ball, and then he made a couple of mistakes, and I think that adds to the pressure. But it's going to become the story of Edinburgh's season that Darcy and Duhan, who are world-class wingers on their day, are standing out there on the touchline, and they've virtually no opportunity to get into games because Edinburgh's attack is just nowhere.
You mentioned injuries there. There's been more updates today out of Edinburgh. It looks like Piers O'Connor's struggling.
Yeah. So Piers O'Connor failed an HIA, which, although they haven't officially sort of ruled him out, you would suggest is then becomes tough. Ewan Ashman failed an HIA, so the pinch points are likely to be hooker and centre.
Because Paddy Harrison's still out, isn't he?
Yeah, so Paddy's still out. I suppose at hooker, there is the backup option of moving Dylan Richardson possibly to the bench, which seems a bit harsh given his performance, but he would give you an experienced backup to you and Ash, or he could start, and then Harry Morris is still in there. The other alternative, though, is you pitch in Jerry Blythe Lafferty with his brother. And that feels like quite a big step for the 2 of them to potentially be there together, given their sort of lack of experience. Edinburgh obviously have options at 7. Hamish Watson could come in. Freddie Douglas was on the bench.
Dylan Richardson could start at 2 and finish the game at 7.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't think that is as huge a concern. Centre, though, is going to be a massive problem because there's no... Although Edinburgh posted a picture this afternoon, I think, of James Lang in training, but Sean Everett basically ruled him out when he spoke to us after the game. So we'll wait. We're speaking to them both to Edinburgh again tomorrow, so we'll hopefully get another update, although that won't come out till Christmas Eve, when the team's been named. So we'll find out more then. Finlay Thompson's out. He's had surgery on his thumb. Who else is there? Obviously, Masese is still out. He's due back mid-January was the last update. Charlie McCaig's out for the season. So all that means Matt Curry, who's just back himself, is the only fit centre.
So sorry, teams are named on Christmas Eve. Is that right?
Sorry, yeah, teams will be out at lunchtime on Christmas Eve. So it's tough to predict, but on that basis, Edinburgh might be looking at Matt Curry at 12 and Wes Houston at 13. Or the other option is they shift Cammy Scott out. Cammy Scott could play 12, keep Matt Curry at 13, keep Wes at fullback. I think a lot of that might hinge on the fitness of Harry Patterson. If Harry Patterson's fit, he maybe starts at fullback. So there's loads. I think Sean said it at the weekend. We need a bit of time to sort some stuff out, and he's not wrong. It's going to be a pretty cobbled together backline. So again, there's you need Darcy and Doohan, the consistent sort of guys there, and your top performers to step up.
Yeah, that's Edinburgh didn't have their problems to seek with selection. With Glasgow, I think we weren't far away from picking that team that played at Hampden. I don't think there was too many surprises in there. And you bring Gregor Brown on, and he did that thing that you love because he came on at lock and then he got moved back to 6, which just makes somebody like you smile because you love that lock come 6. Matt Fagerson just looks like I think on some of the social media hype, they asked, was it Maggie and Sione, about who you don't want to lose to or who chirps the most, and it was Xander for Glasgow. But Matt and Xander just look like they relish that opportunity to play against Edinburgh.
Yeah, no, totally. I think there's a lot of talk that this game means more to Edinburgh because it's potentially the only trophy they'll play for. But I thought you got a real sense, and like we spoke to again George Horn at the weekend, and there was a real sense of what it meant to these guys to win the derby. I've got good news, Bruce. You've managed to sort us out. Cammy says he'll put sausage rolls on his to-do list.
Although Cammy, I'm off puddings, right? Puddings have gone, but sausage rolls are still on the list. So well played. So you didn't need to bring many cakes, but the sausage rolls from Little's Bakers in Moffat are top drawer. So I'm delighted.
I want to know how high up on the to-do list, because I'm not wanting them for next Christmas. So, could we come to some arrangement that we get them this side of the new year?
We'll get them on Saturday. Good lad, Cammy. So what's the lap man saying?
Sorry, Latman was. I mean, Darcy did look miserable, to be fair, at Murrayfield, at Hampden. Sorry, Latman was
Darcy's
saying...
for a hoik. He always looks miserable, George.
Bordeaux have both Peno and LBB, Louis Bielbieri, and score frequently despite low possession, which is insane when you think about that and then look at Edinburgh.
But Lapman, yes, I get what you mean, but I remember Scotland losing to the All Blacks. I can't remember when it was. They lost 40-0.
At the World Cup?
And I think they had something like 39% possession.
Yeah.
I think it was. When was that? It was at Murrayfield. But they lost 40-0, but Scotland had the ball, I think, for 60% of the game. So I get what you mean, but it's what you do when you've got it and the kind of ball that you've got. And the game's slow, and the competition at the breakdown is pretty fierce. And Ben Velicott would love to be keeping that guard shield, and whoever's in behind, he would love to be keeping them honest so that it then frees up space by bringing the defence in and he can free up space out there. But it's just not quite there. And teams play to box kick. I watched a wee bit of the Bath game on Sunday and I was absolutely number 8 pickup, and then they set up a box kick. You're like, come on, let's play off that. So there's an element of that. If we kick it the furthest, we'll win because we're putting you under pressure and we're winning the territory. So I think it's what you do with it when you've got it, and how do you generate that? The line out goes well. Scrum, I think we probably parity, if not more. The scrum's gone well recently. So for Edinburgh, there's a lot there, but Glasgow have this. There was a point, I think it was just after Edinburgh scored, and Glasgow only ran off 9, but were consistently making a couple of yards. And Edinburgh, their defence, they threw everything into it, but because the defence is back and you're coming onto the ball, Glasgow were able to keep just making little incremental progress up the field, and it was just through brute strength. There wasn't a lot of glamour to it, but it was a spell of, right, Edinburgh are up, let's spend some time on the ball and just completely take the sting out of it. And that was pretty well managed, and it's impossible for Edinburgh to get their hands back on the ball and try and get some momentum again, having just scored. So there's so much in it. And I think everybody's frustrated, though. I think, there's quite a lot of Glasgow supporters on social media saying, they want to see it more open.
Yeah, I agree. Just to go back to the point about, you mentioned the Newcastle game, with a comment ages ago that I sort of skipped over at the time, totally forgot about. Apologies to Ross. Went to Newcastle Red Bulls Bath. I actually thought, oh dear, that could be, because it ended up being a sore one for Newcastle, and I just expected it to be half empty, and Kingston Park was full. So I think that shows that people will make the effort if they think the product is good. People obviously were like you. I know you had other commitments, but I'm sure if you were that blown away, because all 4 of you were at Hampden last year.
Yeah.
So if you were desperate to go, I'm sure you would have made it work. I think that's the frustration, is that we're kind of, I'm not sure where we're at with the whole Hampden thing. And as you say, maybe the first game and last game of the season is the answer. But
me taking a family of 4 to Hampden, I'm not getting a lot of change at £100.
No, exactly. And
I'd be interested to know. I'd be interested to know what the story is at, and maybe he can jump back on and tell us what the ticket prices were. But there's a bit of novelty around Newcastle Red Bulls at the moment, because people are excited by it. It's a new thing.
I also think that we have to acknowledge the fact that Bath are the sort of biggest show in town at the minute. Finn, I know he didn't play, but people have bought tickets to say, "Oh, let's go and see."
Bath emptied the bench and put all 8 on at the same time.
I mean, that should be the opposite bench should at that point be able to throw in the towel and just say, "No, I'm done." That's too much. We've had another comment. Somebody saying I paid £100 for 2 tickets. That was to Hampden. No, I think that's a lot for a club game. There's not the same.
That's very comfy seats at £50, surely.
It is, and I don't want to use the word activities, but there's not a lot around Hampden. In fact, there was virtually nothing that I could see. In the same way that there is at Murrayfield, there's that kind of, I hate the word fan village, but that, people can enjoy themselves for a couple hours. There's Ross back on, £20 for an adult, £18 for a pensioner. That's hard to argue with.
Somebody was telling me today, Stenhousemuir against Inverness Cali at the weekend was £20 to get in, and that's what's that, League Two in Scotland, the 20 quid
Yeah.
to get. So getting Newcastle Red Bulls and Bath for 20 quid is not bad. Jamesy boy, 15 quid for a ticket to Hampden. That's decent. I mean, so for me to take 4 from Edinburgh through to Glasgow, 60 quid just for my tickets. I've got to find somewhere to park and somewhere. It's, I mean, it is what it is, and you make your decisions. I think the Hampden one I'm interested to see. I think it'll be persisted with. I think it'll still be at Hampden next year. I think there'll be a big push. The other bit that kind of falls down on this time of year, you're struggling to get school groups and clubs to go, because a lot of that, well, schools had apart from a couple of councils had shut down, but clubs have got other things on, Christmas party nights, work nights out. Yeah.
I think we talked about that last week, that definitely has an impact. There's a reason clubs will maybe say, look, we'll organise to go to one, but there's that, the novelty factor maybe for some people of, we'll go to Murrayfield, not we'll go to Hampden. I think that's a factor as well. Look, I think there's loads to it, but Cammy's back with another comment. What about Blair Kinghorn, basically? He's on the wing for Toulouse. Others doing the same at Glasgow and Edinburgh. Scotland fullback.
I think, personally, Cammy and whoever else is listening, I think the back line is pretty set if everyone is available. I think Blair plays at 15. I think Kyle Steyn and Darcy are the wingers. I think Hugh Jones and Sione are the centres, Finn Russell and Ben White. I would be very surprised if they're all fit and healthy. I'd be very surprised if that isn't the team that Gregor picks, with Tom Jordan and Jamie Dobie on the bench. I can't see there being much. It's harsh on Hutchison. It's harsh on possibly Duhan by that stage. It's harsh on, that there's just not a lot of space. But Stafford's going well. But yeah. I think Gregor's team is reasonably set. I'm not sure what anybody can do to dislodge that.
I am going to throw a curveball in that and say, I think if Gregor thinks, I think the Duhan thing has proved that, if he thinks that he's got players who are definitely on better form, he's not averse to making that change. I think Blair gives you as much cover as Tom Jordan does. Tom Jordan at the minute is in much better form. I think there's a case to be made for a straight swap and Blair goes to the bench. I think the other part of it that we need to be really wary of over these next, because Edinburgh have got a really, really tough run of games before sort of Six Nations time, is if the attack continues not to fire, Darcy's form drops, we end up with a situation where we've got Kyle Steyn and Blair Kinghorn on the wings for Scotland and Tom Jordan's the fullback, and all of a sudden Duhan and Darcy are struggling to get in the 23. So I get your point. I think all things being equal, the team is probably set. And I think because we've got Italy first in the Six Nations, particularly Darcy will get a chance to, and Blair will get a chance. But I think for some games, Gregor might look and say, well, actually, Tom Jordan's really pushing here. And the other part is we don't know. Sorry to, but and again, the other part is we don't know where Hugh Jones is going to be, and how easy is he? He's been out 6 months. How easy is he going to just jump straight back in? And does that make a case for Hutch stays or Stafford comes in or TJ plays 12? I've no idea.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much form. I'm not sure how much form will come into those selections. I think there's an element of money in the bank, tried and tested. Yeah. We know how you are in camp. We know how you can perform at Test rugby. playing with different players with a different game plan. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we're looking into the crystal ball quite far into the future. There's a lot to happen between now and then, and I really, really hope Gregor can get to the Six Nations with everybody fit, so he's got to make those calls, and we'll get a real indication to who he's starting, who his preferred choices are, and I think he'll be quite loyal to them all the way through to the. Personally, the way going back to back in 1872, I don't know what happens now. I would love to be at Edinburgh and seeing what Sean is working on. I'd love to know what Franco's up to. You've got 6 days. I think Christmas Day. I think the Edinburgh boys told me they've only got Christmas Day off, which means they've trained today. They train tomorrow. They'll train on Wednesday, which means Thursday off. Friday ready to go for Saturday. So there's not a huge amount of time to, and that's the case in the season, right? That's just how it is, but not against the same opposition. So this is a unique situation.
And you also don't have to do, like the whole idea of preview and review sort of goes out the window, because you don't really need to preview the same team twice. So there'll be little tweaks that both teams make, but I wonder, and again, this is a bit crystal ball stuff, but Glasgow have got big games in Europe, Clermont and Sarries in January. And just 12 points is quite a big lead in the scheme of the 1872 Cup. I wonder if Franco makes a few changes for this one.
How bothered is Franco about the 1872 Cup?
So here's where I think it's different for Edinburgh and Glasgow. I think Edinburgh really want the Cup because they've not had it for a long time. I think Glasgow sights are set on other Cups at the end of the season, and they're not really that bothered if they win the 1872 Cup, as long as it's a nice, I think it's a nice shiny thing they can put away in the Scotland cabinet. But the more important thing for them is the 9 points or the 10 points from the 2 league games.
Yes, and I think actually that's the most important thing. The nice side effect will be that you win the 1872 Cup. But
yes.
If Edinburgh don't win the 1872 Cup but get 5 points at Murrayfield, that's probably been a successful couple of weeks.
And I asked Magnus this after the game, because Edinburgh actually gave themselves a shot after what had, let's face it, been a pretty drab game. Edinburgh, Gilco scored. I am not entirely convinced at all that he actually grounded the ball on the line. However, it was given, and we actually spoke to Gilco after, and even he was a bit like,
I was so pleased that Gilco scored. It was such a great line, that inside ball and the big cart horse going for it. I loved that.
Even he wasn't 100% committing to, yes, it was definitely on the line. I think even he admitted I had a few goes at it, which I think if the ref saw again, he would probably give a penalty. But Edinburgh are losing bonus point at that point. You think, okay, number one, you've stopped Glasgow getting 4 tries. Number 2, you leave with a bonus point. You've not played well. Just hold on. Just see this out. And inevitably, Seb Stevens scores and Edinburgh trudge back along the M8 with nothing. So now it feels like they need to get something. They need to win at the weekend. Otherwise, you're saying, well, we've had nothing from 0 points from 2 games is a disaster. It then piles the importance on the game on the 3rd of July. I've forgotten the fixtures now, but it's one of the Italian teams. Zebre. I'm going to check very quickly.
Good afternoon for Seb Stephen.
It was a good afternoon. Sorry, Edinburgh at Benetton on the 3rd of January. So that's tough. Like, that's really tough. And you could be looking at no points from 15 in the league. And then you roll into the 2 European games against Gloucester, and then you've got to go to Bath, and it's just, it starts to get quite ominous looking. So I think,
but that's what Edinburgh have wanted for a number of years, being not being in the Champions Cup. They want to be in these games. They want those challenges. They want to be going. They want to be higher up the league than they are. Of course they do. I think everybody does, apart from the team at the top. So that's just a given. And I think they have to. They have to be able to get to Benetton with a squad to pick as well. Weekend. Sorry, say it again.
Well, that is also true. That's it's looking more and more like you might need to dig out your boots.
I don't need to dig them out; they're always there. Take them in my bag, next to my clipboard for announcing, and my boots are there. Don't worry. Always take your boots. You never know what's going to come over the tannoy. Imagine I got to announce my own name. How good would that be?
The question is, would you be running on with the Edinburgh Rugby blazer still on, or would you have to take that off before you go on?
I'd take that off and hand it to Cookie for him to put in a coat hanger and wait for me to come back. Coming on to the field, number 22, Bruce Aitchison, leaving the field, number 10, Cammy Scott. I'm in. Drop goal. We get held up over a line. We're winning by 5, and Glasgow nudge it to me on the halfway line. I fake on the right, and then I drop goal on my left to take it to 8 points, and some hope. Glasgow, you reckon they're going to make changes? What's the intel there? Why do you figure that?
I don't. So the reasoning is purely speculative. But when you look at the Glasgow team, they went basically first choice for all of Sale, Toulouse, Edinburgh, Hampden. So I just think, can the same essentially 23, 24 players go again this weekend? And then you give you give them one weekend off. Glasgow plays Zebre, but then they're straight back to it with 2 big European games. For somebody like Xander, for example, he's hardly played, and all of a sudden you're asking him to play probably 5 of your biggest games of the season in 6 weeks. So Franco's a guy who makes a lot of changes. Although he hasn't in the last few weeks, but traditionally he has made a lot of sort of chopped and changed his squad.
So who are you rotating out of the squad? Because George Horn could go to the bench, Jamie Dobie could start, or Ben Afshar could remain on the bench and Dobie goes to nights. But who's coming out of that squad? George Horn wants to play every second, and he's a nuisance, and he definitely wants to play against Edinburgh.
Yeah.
Hastings and Lancaster maybe swap, but not sure. Sione, I think, is too important to not play. Stafford play. Kyle, like that back line.
Yeah, so the caveat to this is I think the changes will come up front because the back division is pretty stretched, just like Edinburgh's. Glasgow are probably 1 injury in the back 3 away from total crisis.
So talking about the future, Glasgow have got Zebre at home on Saturday the 3rd. Yes. Is that not the one to make the changes for?
I think they will make changes for that. What I think Franco has been clear that he doesn't really want to do is pick all the kids together in one game. So I wonder if, for example, Matt Fagerson gets a rest and Mackenzie Duncan plays at the weekend, or Ewan Ferry comes back in if he's fit again, or the props, for example, rotate and you find yourself Xander's on the bench and the game on the 3rd of January could be Sam Talakai starts or Schickerling starts or Finrich, you know what I mean? Glasgow have got more options to rotate, and I think Franco sort of trusts his squad. But Equally,
I think against Edinburgh, I would struggle to see many changes being made, but the Zebra game makes sense. I take your point on the bit about the kids, but that bench that Glasgow has got, you take Matt Fagerson out against Zebra, Gregor Brown gets to start, or you take Jamie Dempsey out and Gregor Brown gets to start, and you bring a kid onto the bench, or I would be really surprised if Xander doesn't start against Edinburgh, but then maybe doesn't play at all in Zebra and Talakai comes in and then Schickerling or Richardson comes on the bench and there's a sort of rotation there. I think the rotation that would be important, in my opinion, would be players to completely come out the squad rather than Xander go on the bench. I think Xander starts, or he's not there and he gets a rest.
Yeah, no, I get that. I think, look, we are a bit sort of speculating, stabbing in the dark about what the teams might look like. I think it just wouldn't surprise me at all. For example, I think Sean Everett knows how important this game is for himself, for Edinburgh's whole season. You know, he has said nobody will be rested. He's barely got a backline to pick from. So
I was going to say he's not got. Unfortunately for Sean, he's not got many options to rest. There's it's such a shame because that's what Scottish Rugby talking about this being the jewel in the crown. In respect to the pro teams,
yeah,
of course it is. To not have the two best lineups going against each other it can't be helped. It's nobody's fault necessarily, but we'd say, especially with them being at home, you would like Edinburgh to be at full strength. But I'm interested to see, because obviously Wes played 13, but that was because there was somebody to play 15. I'm not sure who would play 15 with. If Wes moves to 13, Matt Curry would move to 12, and he's played there before. It's a lot of moving pieces, though, to make the thing work.
Yeah, but whoever plays at 12 is, there's a difference between playing at 12 and doing an okay job and playing at 12 and having to get the better of Sione Tuipulotu, who looks like in the last... Yeah, he is quite good. In the last couple of weeks, I sort of think he's... when we spoke to Sione at the end of the autumn, I got the sort of sense that there was a bit of a chip on his shoulder, and he made some comments about the media might turn on Scotland, and he said, I've got points to prove when I go back to Glasgow, and I think he's done that the last couple of weeks. He looks sort of closer to his best. So then whoever plays 12 for Edinburgh is going to have a huge task on their hands because they're playing against a guy who's world class and right at the top of his game.
I wonder if somebody like Sione says to Franco, I'm playing. Like I want to play. Like don't. I don't know how it works. Like I don't know what the dynamic is. I don't know enough about any of them. I don't know if somebody can say that to Sean or Franco or Gregor.
I think Franco.
All three of them would soon make who's in charge. But the likes of Sione, if Sione's feeling it, it would be hard to say, no, you need to sit this one out, son.
Hello, are you there?
I am there. I don't know if you are.
Sorry, I am. I don't know what's happened there. But my point was just going to be, I think Franco is very much the boss. I'm not sure anybody's telling Franco, I'm in, so just put my name on the team sheet, please. And Franco says, yep, no problem. I think Franco will do what Franco wants, basically.
No, and I get that. But Sione, if Sione's feeling it and he's good to go, and there is that bit of this game's important and they want to, and the Zebra one maybe is the one that they can, and it's at Scotstoun. Yeah. So it's it's not a gimme because Zebra are putting together, and they're fighting for their lives. So, which I'm not sure I fully understand, but the political situation there. But Zebra seem to have made progress this year. I don't know. I don't know how to call it. This time last year, we were sitting in between the games and wondering what was going to happen. Hampden hadn't really gone well, and the turnaround in those 6 days was a result rather than a performance, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I feel a wee bit like Edinburgh need both this weekend, but obviously, if it was result and no performance, they'd take that over performance and no result. But look, I think certainly from an 1872 Cup point of view, Glasgow are in the driving seat, 12 points in front, is a handy lead. I think if Glasgow can get anything on the road, they'll be pleased. But for Edinburgh, you feel like Edinburgh need to win and make a bit of a statement this weekend.
And crowd attendance, we tracking on to what sort of numbers are we looking at, do you think?
Yeah, so 30,000 tickets, I think Edinburgh announced had been sold yesterday, as of yesterday, with no further updates. So you'd assume maybe mid-30s, pushing kind of 40,000, which was 40,000 was last year's crowd. And I think if you get that again, at this stage, Edinburgh would be delighted. But yeah, so somewhere sort of mid-30s, I think would be reasonable.
And the ticket sales, Franco went early with his team, and some of the thinking was that helps ticket sales. We're not expecting anything early from Edinburgh. You think that's Christmas Eve?
No, I think the team details will come out on all these URC games at the weekend. So yeah, it'll be both teams at the same time, and then people will be able to make their mind up whether they fancy a wee Saturday afternoon out in at Murrayfield.
And hopefully we get decent weather and get a good game, and we can feel good about things. Oh well, good to see you, fella. Have a great Christmas. I hope the turkey goes well. I've got my Dod Aid kit on. Folk can sign up for Dod Aid now. Starts on the 1st of January. Get involved, folks, and hopefully we'll see you all at Murrayfield, because I will be at that one. A final word from our sponsor. The Scotland Rugby News podcast was brought to you by S1 Jobs. It was time to hand in your transfer request and head over to s1jobs.com and upload your CV right now. There are thousands of jobs all across Scotland, and you can find the one for you at S1 Jobs. So go on, start your search just in time for Christmas. Look after yourselves, look after each other, be kind. Merry Christmas.